Hey YouTube, welcome to the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty set review. We're going to start out with the gold cards, artifact land cards, because that'll give us an idea of what archetypes we're supposed to draft, and then we'll go through and do the other colors. These will be split up in videos again, so you'll get one-ish video a day. I don't think it quite works out, so I'll probably double up on some day. But yeah, this is going to be a limited set review. My perspective, my opinions. Haven't drafted this set, haven't played with these cards, haven't read many of these cards, so these are my first glance impressions. But let's get started with Asari Captain. Asari Captain is 3 red-white for a creature human samurai at uncommon. It's a 4/3 with haste. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each samurai or warrior you control. So red-white is obviously aggro, as it always is, and it's about samurais and warriors and having exalted. Doesn't say exalted, but a lot of these cards care about attacking alone. They want one samurai to get in. This is the Lord, because if you have a bunch of samurai and warriors, not only do you get whatever bonus for attacking alone, you're going to also pump it up for all those samurai and warriors that are hanging back. Obviously not quite the plan of most aggro decks, where normally you'd want to turn everything sideways, but this still does tend to work a lot. Exalted is a mechanic that I loved from M13, and attacking with one creature that is large because of a bunch of triggers is still pretty good, because if it hits, it's going to do a lot of damage. If it dies, cool. Next in line, you're going to start attacking by yourself. This card seems totally solid. It's in like the third-ish pick range. You're obviously going to pick real bombs over this. You're obviously going to pick real good removal over this. But around the third, fourth pick range is where I think I would pick this up, and it's going to be a build around for that archetype. Up next is Colossal Sky Turtle. Colossal Sky Turtle is 4 green, green, blue for an enchantment creature turtle at uncommon. It's a 6/5 with flying and ward 2. It has channel, which is a new keyword or reminder text, I guess, for Kamigawa. And basically, it gives a discard outlet to the card. So 2 and a green for discarding Colossal Sky Turtle to return target card from your graveyard to your hand, or channel 1 and a blue, discard Colossal Turtle, return target creature to its owner's hand. So basically, this is a 6/5 flying ward 2 for 7, which is a lot. Absolutely a lot of mana. But if you're not getting there and you have to, you can pay 2 and a green and you have regrowth. Or you can pay 1 and a blue and you have unsummon. Lot of versatility around this. Lot of versatility. So I think I have this probably around like it's probably got to be around a third-ish, fourth-ish pick again. I'm picking bombs over this. I'm picking removal over this. But this is going to be just so versatile. If you hit 7 mana, a 6/5 flying ward 2 is going to be nuts and really hard to beat. And if you just can't quite get there, you've got other things to do. I see a couple of questions in chat at the moment. I didn't explain the ranking method. I should have gone over that. It's where you would pick it, pack 1. So I avoid all of the garbage about grades, because grades suck. Grades are stupid. Grades are awful. It doesn't mean anything if a card is a B or if a card is a B-. It doesn't matter if this rare is better than this rare, because guess what? You're going to pick the rare. You don't have to pick between the two ever, unless there's a foil in a paper pack, but paper magic doesn't exist. As well, they're always going to make your deck. There's no reason to discuss A versus A- or any bullcrap like that. So this is simply, where would I pick this? Pack 1. Up next is Aiganjo Uprising. Aiganjo Uprising is X red-white for a sorcery at rare. Create X 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. They gain menace and haste until end of turn. Each opponent creates X -1 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. So you put in 6 mana into this, you get 6 2/2s, they get 5 2/2s, but your 2/2s have menace, which means generally, barring other stuff on the battlefield, they're going to be able to block half of your 2/2s. So this is kind of, again, if you're behind and your opponent has 20 creatures on the board, this isn't true, but this is kind of like half of a fireball, or I guess it's straight up a fireball because they're 2/2s. So like if 3 of your 2/2s get in, you're dealing 6 damage for the 6x that you put into this. Interesting card. It's going to absolutely end games out of nowhere because it's kind of nutty like that, especially if you get late game without a ton of stuff on the board. So yeah, I would first pick this card. I don't think it's going to be that much of a downside that they have X-1 2/2s because they're probably going to have to throw away a lot of their 2/2s blocking yours. And yours have vigilance, which mean, well, they both have vigilance, but yours attacked with vigilance, and so they're going to be able to block next turn. I think it's a pretty good card. I think it's probably just outside of bomb range, so I think it might be slightly better as like second pick. I might pick extraordinarily unconditional removal over this. And who knows what the uncommons look like. Uncommons these days are ludicrously bomby. But yeah, I'll put this at a second pick for Aiganjo Uprising. Up next is Enthusiastic Mechanaut. Enthusiastic Mechanaut is blue-red for an artifact creature Goblin Artificer at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with flying. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I don't know how a goblin can be an... It's wearing an artifact, but he's not an artifact, right? Anyways, blue-red is the artifact deck. This makes your artifacts cheaper, which is pretty good in the artifact deck. Plus, it's a 2/2 flyer. This reminds me of Goblin Electromancer, which was a 2/2 for blue and a red that made your instants and sorceries 1 cheaper. But this one flies. This one can actually do something rather than just making your spells cheaper. So I think this will be a relatively high pick and build around if the blue-red artifact deck is decent. So I'm around like a third, fourth pick for this one as well. Obviously not in the bomb range. It's explicitly good if you're building artifacts. Otherwise it is just a 2/2 flyer for 2, which is fine. But yeah, third, fourth pick for Enthusiastic Mechanaut. Up next is Gloom Shrieker. Gloom Shrieker is 1 black-green for an enchantment creature cat beast at uncommon. It's a 2/1 with menace. When Gloom Shrieker enters the battlefield, return target permanent hand from your graveyard to your hand. If Gloom Shrieker would die, exile it instead. So this is Eternal Witness, but it's black-green instead of green-green. It's got menace, which makes it much more attackable. And it does only return a permanent as opposed to anything, but this is limited. Typically, a lot of the stuff that we would love to bring back are permanents. And if it would die, you exile it instead, so there's no, returning this with another Gloom Shrieker, yada, yada, yada. But this is just a lot of value for 3 mana. I think this is around a third, fourth pick as well. Green-black is Graveyard Matters deck, and this is a way to get your stuff back. This might look unassuming if you just haven't played with Eternal Witness or cards like that, but this card is quite good. Third, fourth pick for Gloom Shrieker. Up next is Greasefang, Okiba Boss. Greasefang is 1 white-black for a legendary creature Rat Pilot at rare. It's a 4/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of your next end step. So 4/3 for 3 already is obviously way above rate, or at least mildly above rate. And then at the beginning of combat, this doesn't even have to attack or anything. You're going to bring a vehicle back. Now, very importantly, this is beginning of combat step, which means as long as you stay in that step, and oh god, I hope Arena lets us do that, you can then crew that vehicle that came back, and it has haste, so it's going to be able to attack. It is going to come back to your hand at the end step, so you are going to have to recast it, but it came back from your graveyard. It died once. Oh no, you have to cast it again. This seems pretty good. Black-white, I believe, is the vehicles deck, so this seems like a pretty dang high pick to me. Probably first pick out of the packs that it's in. I can't imagine there's removal that goes over this or anything at uncommon that goes over this, so first pick for Greasefang, Okiba Boss. Up next is Hedatsu Consumes All. This is 1 black-red for an enchantment saga at Mythic. The first step is destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 1 or less. So, tokens, I guess. I don't 100% know what we're happily destroying with that first step at Mythic. Step 2, exile all graveyards. Okay, sure, cool, whatever. Step 3, and this is going to be the same for all sagas in this set, exile it, and then return it to the battlefield transformed, because we are never getting rid of double-faced cards ever again in our lives. The backside, so this will be Cast stage 1, turn 2, stage 2. So turn 3 after casting this, or 2 turns after casting this, I suppose, you get Vessel of the All-Consuming. It's a 3/3 trample. I will always assume this flies. Whenever Vessel of the All-Consuming deals damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Sounds great. That's not damage to face. That's damage to anything. That's not damage on attack. That's damage on blocks. That's damage on anything. Put a counter on it. Whenever Vessel of the All-Consuming deals damage to a player, if it has dealt 10 or more damage to that player this turn, they lose the game. If this thing's a 10/10, that means that it has dealt some amount of damage that isn't that hard to calculate, but I'm not going to do it right now, and also hit your opponent for 10, they're probably dead. You're probably not doing that second trigger, they're just dying anyways. This card seems great. You'll first pick it. Even if you're not killing much with the first stage, even if exiling graveyards isn't doing that much, this 3/3 that just threatens to utterly take over the game seems fantastic. So, easy first pick for Hidetsugu Consumes All. As a note with these sagas, be aware that we are going back to the Magic Origins Planeswalker style flip, where this does exile and then comes back, which means that this does not have haste, or it doesn't have haste, so it does have Summoning Sickness, because it left the battlefield and returned. Be aware. Up next is Hinata Dawncrowned. Hinata Dawncrowned is 1 blue-red-white for a legendary creature, Kirin Spirit. At rare, it's a 4/4 flying trample. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target. Spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target. So it's a 4/4 flyer, 4/4 flample for 4, which is solid. I don't think you're going to go Jeskai to play this. I think you're probably going to go blue-red splash white, or blue-white splash red, or red-white splash blue, and you'll pretty happily play this. I don't know that your spells are going to be 2 cheaper or 3 cheaper. We don't tend to be targeting multiple things all the time in Limited. I think they're generally going to be 1, but that's still good. I think this is a pretty high pick, and we know fixing is going to be semi-plentiful in this format, so I think this is a very high first pick, and I agree, this is a commander card that for some reason is in this set. They print so many commander products. They have exclusive cards that you can only find in set boosters that are in the commander set, but never appear in commander precons. And still we get cards like this in our limited sets for some reason. Anyways, first pick for Hinata. Up next is Invigorating Hot Springs. Look at that monkey. He's so relaxed. Invigorating Hot Springs is 1 red-green for an enchantment at uncommon. Invigorating Hot Springs enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it. Modified creatures you control have haste. Equipment, auras that you control, and counters are modifications. So this enchantment is modified. Remove a +1/+1 counter from Invigorating Hot Spring. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery and only once each turn. So red-green is the modification deck. There's cards that care about modified creatures, and this is obviously a way for you to throw +1/+1 counters all over and modify your creatures. This is kind of like a very slow, like, what am I thinking of? Like Guiding Voice, I guess, +1/+1 counter on something, and it, recasts for 4 turns, except it's slightly better than that because you don't have to put a counter on something every turn, but you do only get to put 1 counter on something each turn. We'll see how much you care about modifying and how slowly you can modify things, because this does feel slightly slow, but also probably somewhat hard to interact with. So I'm really curious what we're going to do with it. Also gives haste to anything. Modified creatures you control have haste. Very fair, very fair. So it's +1/+1 counter and haste as long as this is sticking around. So I guess it's not that slow, especially since it gives haste. It does have a reminder of Rhythm of the Wild or Fires of Yavimaya. I'm going to start this around a 4th pick. It's not quite pulling me in. Typically in Limited, I want creatures. Limited is creatures, right? If I could just have a big creature in this spot, it is kind of similar to that flip card Grove Citadel Siege thingy from Vow, although I think that card's a lot better. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to start it around a 4th pick. It might go up to about a 3rd pick. It's obviously a build around. It's obviously meant for these colors. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just wondering if there's going to be better ways to modify and better creatures to play than playing this. But we'll see. Let's go 3rd, 4th pick. Up next is Ishin, 2 Heavens as 1. Ishin is red, white, black for a 3/4 legendary creature human samurai at rare. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Obviously, we've already seen one thing that this would happen on, and that is the red, white samurai, Asari, whatever. A lot of the samurai stuff is whenever it attacks alone, blah, 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 blah. Here, it would be whenever it attacks alone, blah, 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 blah. And also, let's do that again. So I think this is probably going to have a pretty big home in red, white, splash black. I believe we saw a white, black rare that had... No, that wasn't an attack thing. We will see an attack thing. But yeah, basically, if you have 2 of these colors and you happily splash another one and you have triggers, this is going to be pretty dang good. If you somehow have no triggers, it's a harder to cast 3/4 for 3, which is not that big. But yeah, I think you'll know when you want this. I don't really want to first pick this, I don't think. That's just, it's a commitment and a build around, and it kind of requires like other build arounds to build around this. I think it's going to be fantastic when you get the deck, but I think I would rather see this pack 2, pack 3. So I'll put this around like 3rd-ish pick, which means I'll never see it pack 1. But I want to get rewarded with this in pack 2, pack 3 when I'm already in something like Red White Samurais with attack triggers. Up next is Jukai Naturalist. Jukai Naturalist is green-white for an enchantment creature human monk at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with lifelink. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. There are enchantments, there are enchantment sagas, there are enchantment creatures, there are enchantments kicking around. So a 2/2 lifelink for 2 that makes all my enchantments cheaper seems totally okay. It is in the 3rd, 4th pick range though, and it is a build around for that color combination. This is very far away from a bomb. It's much more similar to the Goblin something or other Mechanaut that we saw with artifacts. Interesting conversation in chat. This does affect both players. No, it doesn't. What are y'all talking about? A permanent you control. So it's only ever going to be good for you. It's never going to be bad for you. Yeah, if your opponent attacks triggering something of yours, that's presumably going to be still very good for you. But yeah. So yeah, Jukai Naturalist, 3rd, 4th pick, build around, not a bomb. Pick better cards over this, but this is going to help you build around enchantments. Up next is our first Planeswalker, Kaito Shizuki. Kaito is 1 blue-black for a legendary Planeswalker Kaito at Mythic, starts with 3 loyalty. At the beginning of your end step, if Kaito Shizuki entered the battlefield this turn, he phases out. +1, draw a card, then discard a card unless you attacked this turn. So, loot unless you attacked. Okay, seems good. -2, create a 1/1 blue ninja creature token with this creature can't be blocked. Doesn't seem amazing, but it'll be very important for blue-black, as we'll see shortly. -7, you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a blue or black creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So at the beginning of your end step, if Kaito entered the battlefield this turn, he phases out. So he comes in, and you +1 or -2, and then he phases out, meaning that he can't even be attacked next turn. And then he phases in, and then he's a normal Planeswalker. Planeswalkers are good. This Planeswalker is good. First pick. Strong first pick. Drawing a card is fantastic. If you're not attacking, oh no, you have to loot. That's still great. -2 to make those unblockable ninjas. Maybe they win the game. Maybe they help you ninjutsu. And if you do get to -7, I think you just win the game. So easy first pick on Kaito here. Up next is the Kami War, or I guess Kami. The Kami War is 1 Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green, for an Enchantment Saga at Mythic. Stage 1, exile target non-land permanent on opponent controls. I should hope so, for paying that mana cost. Second step, return up to 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then each opponent discards a card. That's not that great for that mana cost that I just paid. And then step 3, it comes back as Okagachi made Manifest, an enchantment creature dragon spirit. It's a 6/6. It's all colors. It's got flying, it's got trample. Whenever Okagachi made Manifest attacks, defending player chooses a non-land card in your graveyard. Return that card to your hand. Okagachi made Manifest gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the mana value of that card. So for all of that, you get a 6/6 Flample that when it attacks, your opponent picks the cheapest non-land card from your hand to go back to your hand, or from your graveyard to go back to your hand, and Okagachi gets at least +1/+0. Unless there's an Ornithopter in this set, I suppose. Yeah, I'm never playing this. I don't do this in limited usually. Some night when I'm real bored and the set has driven me into the dirt and I see this pack 1, I'll pick it and I'll try it, but this is an F in limited realistically. There's fixing, but it's just not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. Also, it's not legendary for some reason. Yeah, this is an F for limited. Don't touch it. Have fun, but don't touch it. Up next is Kotos, the Silent Spider. Kotos is 3 blue-black for a legendary creature human ninja. At rare, it's a 4/4. When Kotos, the Silent Spider, enters the battlefield, exile target card other than a basic land card from your opponent's graveyard. Search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. Then that player shuffles. For as long as you can control Kotos, you may play 1 of the exiled cards, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. Now, you may heuristically say, oh, these cards are always bad. You know, I do hate fun, Yargle. Thanks for the 28 months. Now, usually these cards, which are steal a card, go in their deck, get rid of all of them, are constructed only. This one lets you cast one of those cards, which means in limited, this is a 5 mana 4/4 that's going to take your opponent's best spell that they've cast or best creature that has died, and you get to play it too. This card's pretty dang good. Real good. It is a first pick. You're probably not going to get multiple copies of it. It doesn't let you cast multiple copies of it. You can only play 1 of them. But yeah, the card's good. Easy first pick. Up next is Naomi, Pillar of Order. Naomi, Pillar of Order is 3 white-black for a legendary creature human advisor at uncommon. It's a 4/4. Whenever Naomi, Pillar of Order, enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. So 4/4 for 4. When it ETBs, if you have an enchantment and an artifact, it's a 6/6 for 4, essentially, because you get that 2/2. And then every time it attacks, you get a 2/2. 4/4 for 5. Yes, not 4. This card is good, and Black-White's whole shebang is it wants to have artifacts and enchantments. Both. If that's a thing that we can do reliably, then this card just seems very good. Seems like a great build around. If this ever gets to attack and make a 2/2 and not die, I fail to see how you're losing that game. Because it is kind of getting towards Grave Titan. Obviously nowhere near Grave Titan, but it's starting to get towards Grave Titan. This card seems very good. I'm going to pick it quite highly as long as this archetype doesn't suck. So I'm going to go like second, third pick for Naomi, Pillar of Order, knowing that I do need to build around it. If you, don't get enchantments, maybe maybe don't play this card. You know, otherwise, if it's just a 5 mana 4/4, that's not good enough for modern limited Magic. But yeah, pick this highly, build around it, and I think it's going to be great. Up next is Oni Cult Anvil. Oni Cult Anvil is black-red for an artifact at uncommon. Whenever one or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Tap, sack an artifact. Oni Cult Anvil deals 1 damage to each opponent. You gain 1 life. People are going to say that this is ill-gotten inheritance, and they're going to go nuts for it. And I think this card is not good if you are just reading this card and just doing what this card is. That is dealing 1 singular damage a turn and gaining 1 singular life a turn. Ill-Gotten Inheritance was okay because the format could be quite aggro. The red-black deck was especially aggro. And because Ill-Gotten Inheritance could also just go, oops, I'm going to do it 5 times in 1 turn. Because it did it once and then you paid the mana and it did it 4 times, basically. This is never doing it, oops, 5 times in a turn. This is always doing it 1 time a turn. And that's if you have artifacts to sack. If you can get the 1/1, it doesn't care about non-tokens or anything like that. So if you just sort of set the anvil and your 1/1 token that you made aside, they can just do it over and over and over. But that's still just 1 damage, and that's not enough. This is an uncommon. You are not going to be getting several copies of these generally. I am not in on this if we're just pretending that it's Ill-Gotten Inheritance. Now, it's a relatively high or a relatively cheap sack outlet. Tap, sack. But it does only sacrifice artifacts. So I don't even know that we're going to get a sack deck out of this. So I don't know. I don't like the anvil. I'll stake my claim on it right now that I don't like the anvil. If this is all the black-red deck is doing, I'm not really sold. So we'll have to see what else black-red has. But for me, I'm wheeling this at best. I don't want to play it. If it turns out to be good, if the deck turns out to be awesome, cool, good for the deck. But this ain't for me. Up next is Prodigys Prototype. Prodigys Prototype is 1 white-blue for an artifact vehicle at uncommon. It's a 3/4. Whenever 1 or more vehicles you control attack, create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. And this has a crew of 2. So 3 mana 3/4 crew of 2. Crew of 2 is pretty cheap. 3/4 for crew 2 is okay. And it attacks and it makes a 1/1 that can crew as if it was 3. Blue-white is the vehicles deck, and this vehicle seems okay. It doesn't seem great. We'll have to see how vehicles are. Obviously, we saw vehicles in Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, and a relatively small number of them were busted, broken nuts. One thing a lot of people don't talk about is that in Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, there were a number of vehicles that just sucked. The vehicles that everybody remembers were amazing because they had crew 1. Or because they had so many effects on them that they did other stuff. Now, the token is going to help you crew, because that token is going to be virtual 3 power for crewing. So that will hopefully allow the crews to be relatively free otherwise. So I think this is probably still going to be decent, and if the vehicles deck is good, this is going to be a pretty big build around for it, because then you're going to have those tokens to help you crew. So I'll start this out around 3rd, 4th pick. I'm hoping they still have their lessons that they've learned about vehicles, and that the vehicles aren't insane in this set. But we'll see. We'll see. Up next is Ryu, Storm's Edge. Mr. Goto Fredo, thank you very much for the 39 months. Ryu is a 3/3 legendary creature human samurai at rare with 1st strike. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, untap it. If it's the first combat phase of the turn, there is an additional combat phase after this phase. So this by itself is a 4 mana 3/3 first strike that attacks with vigilance, and then you get to attack again, assuming it's still alive. And it doesn't have to attack the second time. You can attack with something else. But yeah, this is a great red-white rare for the red-white deck. And even if you're somehow not in the red-white samurai deck, but you're still playing this, it's still very good. I think the card's great and a pretty easy first pick. Up next is Rasona, Asari Commander. Rasona is 1 red-white. This art gives me, like, not quite Warhammer vibes, but Warhammer vibes. You know? 1 red-white for a legendary creature human samurai at rare. It's a 3/3 with haste. Whenever Rasona Asari Commander deals combat damage to a player, if it doesn't have an indestructible counter on it. I feel like grammatically the it would be referring to the player. Put an indestructible counter on it. Whenever combat damage is dealt to you, remove an indestructible counter from Rasona. Okay, so it's a 3/3 haste for 3 that if it hits is now a 3/3 indestructible. And then if you ever get hit, it's momentarily not indestructible until it hits again. Seems real good. Seems real good, real annoying. It being indestructible means that you could just hang back with it. And as long as they don't have a flyer or an unblockable, it's not losing the indestructible. It just gets to block forever. Card seems great. Seems like a strong first pick. First pick for Rasona. Up next is Satoru Umezawa. Satoru is 1 blue-black for legendary creature human ninja at rare. It's a 2/4. Whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This ability triggers only once each turn. Each creature card in your hand has ninjutsu, 2 blue-black. And they ran out of space to tell you what ninjutsu does. Ninjutsu is an ability on creatures that says something along the lines of, if you have an unblocked attacker, you can pay the ninjutsu cost to return the unblocked attacker to your hand and slam down this creature from your hand. So every creature in your hand, you can pay 2 blue-black to replace it with an unblocked attacking creature. And in doing so, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your library and take one. Seems very good. Ninjutsu is the blue-black mechanic. It's the blue-black deck. And this seems like the blue-black rare. Easy first pick for me. And then you jump into blue-black. Up next is Satsuki, the Living Lore. Satsuki is green-white for a legendary creature human druid at rare. It's a 1/3. Tap to put a lore counter on each saga you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay. So this will get you towards your creature. So Satsuki's already down. You play a saga. Step 1, you tap Satsuki. Immediate step 2. And then next turn, you've got your summoning sick creature. Cool. If you're in green-white and you've got a bunch of sagas. When Satsuki the Living Lore dies, choose up to 1. Return target saga or enchantment creature you control to its owner's hand. Cool. Or return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay. So you're probably not really doing the first one that much unless you're getting it out from underneath a pacifism or something like that. You're generally going to be returning sagas, I would assume, especially because a lot of your enchantment creatures are the backsides of the saga. So if they're in your graveyard, or no, never mind. Yeah, I think you're generally going to be doing the second side of this. But yeah, if you're green-white, you have sagas, go ahead. If you don't, this is pretty mediocre. So I'm on like 3rd-ish pick for this. I think I want unconditional removal over this, and I would be willing to bet that there are just better uncommons than this. I'm honestly kind of surprised this is not an uncommon. TBH. Yeah. 3rd, 4th pick for me for Satsuki. Up next is Silver Fur Master. Silver Fur Master is blue-black for a creature rat ninja at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with ninjutsu for blue-black, and reminder text this time. Ninjutsu abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate. Other ninja and rogue creatures you control get +1/+1. Here's the obvious build around for blue-black. It is the ninja and rogue lord, and it also makes the ninjutsu abilities cheaper. It's got ninjutsu itself, which is not that amazing of a ninjutsu card. Typically, ninjutsu cards are things like, haha, I'm going to hit you now with this card that you'd left in unblocked, and it will do something. I guess the trick here is you ninjutsu it out, and now your other ninjutsu cards are cheaper, and you still could ninjutsu another one out if you have another unblocked attacker. But yeah, this is a obvious high pick build around for the blue-black deck. This is in the second, third pick range. Up next is Spirit Sister's Call. Spirit Sister's Call is 3 white-black for an enchantment at Mythic. That's true, it is a surprise lord effect. At the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with the chosen card. Creature. If you do, return the chosen card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains. If this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. That's a sign of the modern arena times. You just have to remember 7 turns later that card needs to get exiled. I don't like that. So this is 5 mana for a do-nothing enchantment, but at the end of every turn, you can sack a permanent to return a better permanent. But then when that permanent goes away, which you could also sack it in a future turn, it exiles instead. I mean, this is basically... You basically double the creatures in your deck, right? Right? If you have 15 creatures in your deck, now you have 30. But I guess you have to sack your creatures. So you really kind of want tokens. Can you choose tokens? Sacrifice permanent that shows card type. You can pick tokens. And it is a May. It is a May. But it is a May. But if you're putting this in your deck and casting it and playing it and then just saying, no, you probably shouldn't have put this in your deck. But yeah, I suspect this will be very good in many decks, and I suspect that some people will play it and it just won't do the thing that you need it to do. So I'm going to start this around. I mean, I'm first picking it realistically in order to try it out. Yeah, I'm first picking it to try it out, but I think you have to be very cognizant of if this will work in your deck or not. I think people are going to put this in their deck, and it's just not going to work out. Because again, if you have your best creature out, and you have this out, you're not sacking your best creature, which means you paid 5 mana and a card to just do nothing in the hopes that at some point in the future, maybe things will work out. So I'll start at a first pick to try it. Realistically, I think this is going to drop more to like the 4th, 5th pick range. And I think it's really more of like a fun build around than it is a ludicrously powerful card. Up next is Tamio Completed Sage. That's right, if you didn't follow the story, Tamio's a Phyrexian now. Tamio costs 2 green, Phyrexian Simic, and blue. For a legendary Planeswalker Tamio at Mythic, she starts with 5 loyalty. She is completed, which means that Phyrexian mana, you can pay green, or you can pay blue, or you can pay 2 life. However, if you do pay 2 life, then she does enter with 2 fewer loyalty counters. So she would enter with 3 instead of 5. +1, tap up to 1 target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. Sure. -X, exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card. Cool. -7, create Tamio's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and tap, draw a card. Planeswalker's good. +1 defends herself. -X draws cards, kind of, essentially. And if you ultimate, you're drawing 2 cards a turn, and all of your spells are 2 cheaper. It's going to be pretty hard to lose at that point. Easy first pick for Tamio here. I don't think the casting cost is that hard to pay, so I think I would generally want to get her down with 5 mana by paying actual mana for this. But hey, if you can get her down turn early by paying some life, that's probably going to be pretty okay as well. So easy first pick for Tamio Completed Sage. That's it for multicolored. Let's head into artifacts, and then we'll do lands. Automated Artificer is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature Artificer. It's a common, it's a 1/3. Tap to add colorless mana, but spend this mana only to activate an ability or cast an artifact spell. If you are in an artifact-heavy deck, then this is probably going to be very good. It's a 2-mana mana dork. It's a 1/3, so it can even block just a little tiny bit. Looks kind of like Master Chief. A little bit. And it's a mana dork for all of your artifacts, because there are colored artifacts as well, but you need to have a lot of artifacts for this to be something that you really want to go in on. So it's a pretty low pick. We're talking like wheel it, honestly, I think. Not everybody is going to be in the artifact deck. So yeah, wheel this and know when your deck needs it, because a lot of decks aren't really going to want this. Up next is Bronzecudgels. Bronzecudgels is a single generic mana for an artifact equipment at uncommon. Pay 2 generic mana. Until end of turn, equipped creature gets +X/+0, where X is the number of times this ability has resolved this turn. Equip for 1. So 1 mana equipment, 1 mana equip. And it does nothing. But if you pay 2, it's +1/+0. That's awful. If you pay 4, it's +3/+0. That's still pretty damn... It's not going to get any better. This card's awful. This card's absolute garbage. F. Like, if you pay 6 mana, it's +6? And it's +6/+0, which means it can still just be blocked by whatever and killed. This card's awful. F. Up next is Brute Suit. Brute Suit Riot. Brute Suit is 3 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at common. It's a 4/3 with Vigilance and Crew 1. That's a decent enough vehicle. It's not amazing. Crew 1 is as cheap as you can go. It's okay. It's not great. You could probably wheel this. If you're in the vehicle deck, it'll go slightly before the wheel. But it's not great. Wheel, Brute Suit. Up next is Circuit Mender. Circuit Mender is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature insect at uncommon. It's a 2/3. When Circuit Mender enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. When Circuit Mender leaves the battlefield, draw a card. This is extraordinarily similar to Filigree Familiar. ETBs gain 2 life, dies, draw a card. This is Filigree Familiar with +1 toughness, and it doesn't have to die, it just has to leave the battlefield. In an Artifact Matters set, this card's pretty decent. Filigree Familiar was always fine. There's artifact synergy, there's stuff going on here. It's not a ludicrously high pick, but we are talking like 5th-ish, I would say. You'd put this in every deck. 5th pick for Circuit Mender. It's not crazy, it's not winning you the game, but it's just a nice bit of value. Up next is Containment Construct. Containment Construct is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature construct at uncommon. It's a 2/1. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. Hazmat Medic, thanks for the 16 months. So it's a piker, and whenever you pitch a card, you can exile that card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. So if you're looting, or if you're discarding a card for some reason, or if you're like channeling a card, this lets you recast the card, but you're going to have the mana to also do that. This will be interesting. It feels like there will be turns where this does something pretty crazy, but I feel like it's going to require so much mana if you're channeling. So you really want to be doing this on looting. I don't know where this will be. I'll have to see more of the set. I'll have to see how the set plays out. I feel like this is going to be wanted for very specific decks, and they will know if they want it. And you're not going to pick this and go, haha, I'm going to build the discard deck now that I got this card. This feels a little bit more like a pack 3 ooh, I found one kind of thing. So I'm going to drop this down to like 6th through 8th, maybe even wheel in pack 1. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what else is in the set for it. But at the moment, I am unimpressed. Up next is Dramatist's Puppet. Dramatist's Puppet is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature construct. Where is the puppet? Oh, that is the puppet. The Dramatist is in the yellow hat behind. It's a common, it's a 2/4. When Dramatist's Puppet enters the battlefield, for each kind of counter on target permanent, put another counter of that kind on it, or remove one from it. It's Proliferate. But it's Proliferate for 1 target. 4 mana 2/4. Back in my day was a totally normal casting cost. These days, a 2/4 for 4 doesn't feel great. So I really want to make sure that I am adding a +1/+1 counter to something. I don't think I'm playing this to put a lore counter on a saga. It cannot double the number of counters. You put another one on. It doubles it if there's 1 counter. Yeah, you could, sure, you could remove your indestructible counter from your opponent's very specific rare, but yeah, this doesn't seem good to me. There's got to be better ways to modify things. The things are already modified. There's got to be better ways to further modify. There's got to be better things that you can spend 4 mana on. I'm going to wheel this card. I'm not sold on Dramatist's Puppet. Up next is Eater of Virtue. Eater of Virtue is 1 generic mana for a legendary artifact equipment at rare. Whenever equipped creature dies, exile it. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. Equip cost of 1, by the way. As long as a card exiled with Eater of Virtue has flying, equipped creature has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Protection, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Seems good. 1 mana, 1 equipped, +2/+0. I don't care that the creature exiles, and the creature getting exiled is good if it has an ability on it. This is a snap first pick. You play it in every single deck. It's fantastic. Easy, easy, easy first pick. Yeah, that's real good. Thankfully, it's a rare at least, I suppose. Also legendary, so they can't have multiples. Yeah, it doesn't include Ward. Up next is Ecologists Terrarium. Ecologists Terrarium is 2 generic mana for an artifact at common. When Ecologists Terrarium enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Pay 2, tap sack, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. If you're looking for fixing, then this is something for you to fix with. If you don't need fixing, I don't think you play this card. It doesn't go to the battlefield, so it's not ramp. 4 mana to put a counter on something doesn't seem great, but if you're fixing, here's some fixing. There's probably better fixing in the set, but I think you can wheel this pretty heavily. Up next is High Speed Hoverbike. High Speed Hoverbike is 2 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at uncommon. It's a 2/2 with flash and flying. When High Speed Hoverbike enters the battlefield, tap up to 1 target creature, and it's got a crew cost of 1. So this reminds me of the Skiff. Sky Skiff, which was a 2/3 flyer with crew 1. This is a 2/2 flyer with crew 1. Plus, it's a sort of a, not a combat trick, but it's a thing that you can do on your opponent's turn to tap something down to be able to get this in easily, or get your other creatures in easily. This seems totally fine. It's upwards of like 5th, 6th, maybe 6th through 8th pick. This is the fun thing about migrating scale. A lot of people get real pissy about 6th through 8th. Your 6th through 8th picks are typically good cards. They're typically good cards. Not every card can be like a 3rd pick. So I'm on 6th through 8th for this. I think it is totally okay. Crew 1 is always good for vehicles, and a flying vehicle is pretty decent as well. But yeah, 6th through 8th pick for High Speed Hoverbike. Obviously goes up if you're in vehicles or whatnot. Up next is Iron Apprentice. Iron Apprentice is 1 generic mana for an artifact creature construct at common. It's a 0/0. Iron Apprentice enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter on it, so it's a 1/1 for 1. When Iron Apprentice dies, if it had counters on it, which it almost always would, put those counters on target creature you control. So it's graft, right? There's got to be better ways. It is a really cute little ant-looking thing, though. I assume, like, these are the eyes? So there's got to be better ways to modify. There's better artifacts for you to play in the Artifacts Matter. There's everything better for you to do than this card. But it's also probably not the end of the world if this makes it into your modification deck. But I think you can wheel these. I'd be shocked if you can't wheel these. So wheel on Iron Apprentice. Up next is Mech Titan Core. Mech Titan Core is 2 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at rare. It's a 2/4 with crew 2. Pay 5, exile Mech Titan Core and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles you control. Create Mech Titan, a legend. People are going to say this is Voltron. This is a Megazord. Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste that's all colors. When that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core, except Mech Titan Core, to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control. That's a very cool flavor that I don't think you're going to pull off too much. 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles, and you get a 10/10 flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, haste. So 5 mana, you are hitting your opponent, maybe unblocked, for a 20-point life swing. This is probably just great. Right? This is where, like, hi, I'm playing Iron Apprentice if I have a Mech Titan Core. Why? Because it's an artifact creature. And there's artifact creatures and there's vehicles and whatnot kicking around. So I'm going to first pick this and I'm going to try this. I really want this to work. I want to build my Megazord and I want to take that 20-point life swing. We'll see if it works. I'm going to be optimistic on Mech Titan Core to start. I'm going to first pick it. It could be that it's just not impactful enough, and it really is a 2/4 crew 2, which would put it much more on the wheel. But I'm going to start first picking this here Megazord. Up next is Mirror Box. Mirror Box is 3 generic mana for an artifact at rare. The legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. That probably doesn't matter. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. That probably doesn't matter. Each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. This is not for limited. Yes, there's uncommon limited creature or uncommon and legend creatures. You're not getting multiples. This is an F. Don't play it. Absolute F. Up next is Network Terminal. Network Terminal is 3 generic mana for an artifact at common. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Pay 1 tap, tap another untapped artifact you control, draw a card, then discard a card. So it's Manalith with a semi-expensive loot ability on it. That's cool. If you're fixing, here you go. If you're not fixing, it's sort of ramp. It's semi-expensive ramp, but probably not terribly playable. I think you can wheel this pretty heavily if you want to. Up next is Ninja's Kunai. Ninja's Kunai is 1 generic mana for an artifact equipment at common. Equipped creature has pay 1, tap, sack, Ninja's Kunai. Ninja's Kunai deals 3 damage to any target. Equip of 1. So this is a way to modify for cheap, but it doesn't do anything. And the creature has to tap to throw the knife. Which means you're not like attacking and then doing it unless it has vigilance. Probably pretty low. It's in the, like, you know, if you have it, cool. If you need to modify things, cool. There's probably better ways to do it. So I think you can wheel this. I don't think you have to be embarrassed to play it, but I think you can wheel it. Yeah. Wheel it for Ninja's Kunai. Up next is Papercraft Decoy. Papercraft Decoy is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature frog. At common, it's a 2/1. When Papercraft Decoy leaves the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Seems bad. Seems bad. 2/1 for 2s, just don't do it anymore, and paying 2 to draw a card when it goes away, meh. Wheel this. Play it if you're playing the Megazord, but there's significantly better cards. Wheel it. Up next is Patchwork Automaton. Patchwork Automaton is 2 generic mana for an artifact creature constructed uncommon. It's a 1/1 with Ward 2. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Patchwork Automaton. So 2 mana 1/1 bad, 2 mana 2/2 bad, 2 mana 3/3 cool. If you are artifact heavy, so if you are in white-black, or if you are in blue-white, or I think there's a few others that are relatively artifact heavy, this card's going to be probably pretty good, but you need to have a lot of artifacts, and I don't think I want to pick this to build around. I don't think it's a strong enough build around. I think it's more of a payoff. So I want to see this pack 2, pack 3. So I've got this like 4th, 5th, 6th pick after I've picked a pretty, couple nice cards that are going to push me into an artifact deck. But I'm not picking this to build around it in like 1st, 2nd, 3rd pick range. So 4th through 6th, and I'd much rather prefer to see it pack 2, pack 3. Up next is Reckoner Bankbuster. Reckoner Bankbuster. What? 2 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at rare. It's a 4/4. Reckoner Bankbuster enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. Pay 2, tap, remove a charge counter from Reckoner Bankbuster. A Reckoner would be a thing and a Bankbuster would be a thing. Is Reckoner like a faction or something? Take a charge counter off it, draw a card. Then if there are no charge counters on Reckoner Bankbuster, create a treasure token and a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. Crew 3. Crew 3 is a little expensive if you don't already have pilots down or something. So it's 2 tap, counter off, draw. Only after the final draw do you get a treasure and the pilot. This is all good. 2 mana for basically the journal from Vow for 3 turns. And then you get a pilot, and also it happens to be a 4/4 if you have the ability to crew it. Seems totally solid. Reckoners are the Ninja Gang's faction? Okay. So Reckoner, the faction. The Reckoners Bankbuster. Got it. Yeah, this is all good. It's not quite the bomb that I would want to see in my rare slot, but it's pretty dang good. It's probably going to be in the 1st to 2nd pick range. We'll have to see what kind of like ludicrously unconditional removal we get. I might pick some over this, but otherwise, this is totally okay. Up next is Rato Sentinel. Rato Sentinel is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature constructed uncommon. It's a 3/3 defender. When it ETBs, target player mills 3 cards. Pay 3, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. 3/3 for 3 defender just doesn't really seem like as amazing as they used to be. And they didn't used to be amazing. They used to be okay. So I'm not super sold on that aspect. Now, if you are in something like black-green and you are doing graveyardy stuff, then this could help out. It's an artifact creature that could help out for the artifact decks. But I'm not over the moon on this. This is probably just on the wheel. I'm not picking this to get into any deck. I'm picking this like maybe pre-wheel pack 2, pack 3. It is the anti-mill card of the set, which I know some people, Samuelin, love. But yeah, 2nd, 3rd pick, or 2nd, 3rd pack for me, and pack 1, I'm wheeling this. This is not pulling me into anything. This is not doing anything. Up next is Runaway Trashbot. Sounds like my Roomba. Runaway Trashbot is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature constructed uncommon. It's an 0/4 with trample. Runaway Trashbot gets +1/+0 for each artifact and or enchantment card in your graveyard. So obviously you need to be getting artifacts and stuff into your graveyard somehow. And if you do, this is pretty dang good if it's a... I think you start to become happy at 3/4. It's okay as a 2/4, and obviously if it's higher than that, it's pretty dang good. But yeah, make sure you're playing a lot of artifacts and or enchantments. Probably want to have some sort of self-mill going on, and or looting and or discarding and or etc. And if you do, I think you'll be pretty happy with this. If you have some lowish number of artifacts or enchantments, or you don't have a way of just reliably getting them into the yard, I don't know that I want to play a 3-mana 0/4. I don't know that I want to play a 3-mana 1/4. So you'll know what deck this is for. Pack 1, this is going relatively low, like 6th through 8th. Again, after I've sort of got a hint that I might be getting a bunch of artifacts or enchantments. And then pack 2 and pack 3, we can more highly value this based on what we've got. Up next is Searchlight Companion. Searchlight Companion is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature drone at common. It's a 1/1 flyer. When Searchlight Companion enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So we are back into this thing where people are going to always forget that these spirits don't fly, since normally a 1/1 spirit would fly. 1/1 flyer for 3. It is an artifact, so that's cool. We get a token should we want to do any sort of like token shack shenanigans or whatnot. But all in all, this is not looking great to me. This is looking like a wheel. This is looking like filler for a deck that wants artifact creatures, for a deck that wants flyers for some reason, for a deck that's looking to go wide with tokens. But I think you can wheel this pretty reliably. Up next is Shrine Steward. Shrine Steward is 5 generic mana for an artifact creature construct at common. It's a 3/2. When Shrine Steward enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an aura or shrine card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. I don't actually know how many shrines are in this set. I know there's at least 1. Is there a whole cycle? I also don't know offhand how many auras there are. Let's do a quick scryfall for that, because that would be handy. Set, Neo, type, aura. There are not many auras. There's a lot of enchantments, because we've got enchantment creatures and we've got enchantment sagas. But as far as scryfall is concerned, there's 5 auras. And for shrines, there's 5 shrines. This doesn't seem that good for 5 mana. This is a constructed commander blah, 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 blah card. I think I'm just effing this card. I am not paying 5 mana for a 3/2. The aura that I get must be amazing, or the shrine that I get must be amazing. And the shrines are uncommons, so you're not going to have a bunch of them. You'll be lucky to have 1. And if you've already drawn it, and this is just a 5 mana 3/2, this is awful. This is an F. The reason it doesn't cost 3 mana is because this is for constructed or for commander or for whatever, where, you know, you'd be getting some nutty shrine or something. But yeah, this is an F for limited. Absolute garbage. Up next is Surge Hacker Mech. Surge Hacker Mech is 4 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at rare. It's a 5/5 with menace. When Surge Hacker Mech enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Crew 4. Well, it's a 4 mana shock at worst. If you have 1 other vehicle, it's a 4 mana insert 4 damage here. Electrify? It's a 4 mana electrify. Got there. Crew 4 hurts. Crew 4 hurts a lot. Because if you have a 4/4, I mean, you have a 4/4. I don't know that I want to play a vehicle just to Finally get some use out of that 4/4. Tapping 2/2/2s doesn't feel great. It would take 2 pilots. That crew 4 hurts this a bit, I think. I think it's still a good card. I think you're still pretty highly picking it. I think you're probably still first picking it, especially if you're in the vehicles deck, and maybe you can cheat the way to crew a bit. But crew 4 definitely shows that they have maybe learned their lessons here, because crew 4 is quite a bit. But let's go first pick. It's not quite the bomb that I've always dreamed of, but I think it's probably going to be the best card, or at least the most playable card in a number of packs. Up next is Thundersteel Colossus. If you showed me this art, I would almost guarantee that the art has already been on a card before. It just looks like something else. Thundersteel Colossus is 7 mana for an artifact vehicle at common. It's a 7/7 trample haste crew 2. F. You're not paying 7 mana for this. You are, and it doesn't fly. It has both feet on a... I mean, it looks like it's on a cloud, which would suggest to me it's flying, but no, it's not flying. Yeah, this is a trap card. This is the card that, like, a newer player is like, oh, bombs are big creatures, and this is a big creature. It's got trample in the deck. And it's like, well, it's a 7-drop, and you died with it in your hand because you never hit 7 mana. Bye. This is an F. Don't play it. Up next is Tawashi Guidebot. Tawashi Guidebot is 4 generic mana for an artifact creature constructed on common. It's a 2/1. When Tawashi Guidebot enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So 4 mana for a piker, but it modifies something. Maybe itself on target creature. Yeah, it could target itself. Pay 4 mana, tap, draw a card. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each modified creature you control. Oof. Red-green deck. Red-green modification deck with this card. Get yourself 4 modified creatures, and it just says tap, draw a card. I like it. I like it in one specific deck. You need to be modifying things. You need to be modifying things. I guess if it costs 1, it's still really good. If it costs 2, it's kind of like appropriately costed. If it costs 3 or 4, you've done something wrong. So yeah, I like this. Again, I would really like to have this in pack 2 or pack 3, when I already know that I'm going to be modifying the crap out of things. So pack 1, I'm on like 4th, 5th pick for this. Yeah, I think I'm on like 4th-ish pick for this, pack 1. And then you're going to get pack 2s and pack 3s where you know that you are all in on modifying, and this is going to be a great bit of card draw. Up next is Walking Skyscraper. Walking Skyscraper is 8 generic mana for art that does not in any way, shape, or form look like a Magic card. Those look like jets around it. Artifact Creature Construct at uncommon. It's an 8/8. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each modified creature you control. It's got trample, and it's got hexproof as long as it's untapped. Again, if you are in the modification deck and this costs anything less than 7, like if this costs 6 or 5 or 4, and you get yourself an 8/8 trample hexproof that can only be killed by like instant speed after attack stuff or sorcery speed stuff, this seems pretty dang good. But again, you need to know that you're in the modification deck, and I don't think I'm building around this. I think I want to be rewarded by this, just because if I pick this early and I don't get enough modifications, you are not playing this card. 8 mana is way too much. 7 mana for this is still a lot. So yeah, I want to see this pack 2, pack 3, but pack 1, I'll still pick this like 4th pick, 5th pick after I see some good modification-y type stuff starting up. Yeah, Walking Skyscraper, 4th, 5th pick, and then even higher pack 2, pack 3. We are going to get the dual life gain lands back. So these are lands at common in the land slot at an unknown frequency, as last I heard. They enter the battlefield tapped. You gain a life when you play them, and you can tap to add one of the two colors. There are 10, one for each color pair. And again, they are going to be random in your basic land slot. Sometimes you'll get a basic land, sometimes you'll get a dual land. If you're playing in paper, sometimes you get one of the real fancy Japanese basic lands. Blossoming Sands is another life gain land. There's a cycle of rare lands. We've got Boseiju, who endures, a legendary creature at rare, tap to add a green. So it's basically a forest, although it's not a basic forest. But it's got channel. So if you top deck this late in the game and you just don't need the mana, you could instead pay 1 and a green and discard it to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a land card with a basic land type, put it into the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Why does that matter in any way, shape, or form? What a weird last sentence on that card. I top deck this land that I don't need, but thankfully I've got a legendary creature, so I only have to pay green instead of 1 and a green. Whew. Dodged a frickin' bullet there. Yeah, this is fine. It's a forest with some pretty good removal. There's a lot of artifact creatures. There's a lot of enchantment creatures. There's a lot of artifacts and enchantments. So you'll pick this pretty highly. It's kind of a free pick. I'm not picking this over a ludicrously good uncommon or any sort of like unconditional removal, but I'll still pick this in the like 4th, 5th pick range. Like it's just a forest. It's a free pick. It's 1 extra card that you get to put in your deck. If everybody else drafts 23 cards, and you drafted 23 cards in this, you drafted 24 cards, and you got to put more cards in your deck. So yeah, like 4th, 5th pick, but you know, it's not nutty. It's not nutty. Dismal Backwater is another life gain land. Here's Aiganjo, Seat of the Empire. Tap to add a white. Channel 2 and a white. Discard Aiganjo, Seat of the Empire. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So here's why there are slightly more expensive. Again, I don't think it's really doing that much, especially when the play pattern is you're probably going to discard these late game when you top deck them, when you have the mana to spend anyways. But it's a nice bonus. I just don't understand from like a game design perspective why it's necessary. But yeah, this is Gideon's Reproach for 3 mana. Pretty dang good card. I would pick this one higher than the Forest. So actually, let's put the Forest down to like 5th, 6th. I'll pick this one 4th-ish. It's good removal, and if you need the land, cool. It's like an MDFC, right? It's like a modal dual-faced land card from Zendikar. Jungle Hollow is another of the life gain lands. We've got Mech Hanger at uncommon. It's a land. Tap to add a colorless mana. Tap to add 1 mana of any color, but spend this mana only to cast a pilot or a vehicle spell. Yeah, you pick the land as removal, and then if you happen to play it as a land, cool. Pay 3 mana tap. Target vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So 3 mana tap to crew anything, essentially. Fix your mana for pilots and vehicles, although a lot of the vehicles are colorless. And otherwise it's a colorless land. This seems like a card that you'll be very happy to have in the vehicles deck. And if you're not in the vehicles deck, I don't think you play it. So I think this is basically a blue-white land. And maybe you happen to have gotten like a few vehicles in something else, like black-white or something. So yeah, I think you can wheel this, to be honest, pack 1. And then pack 2, pack 3, if you know you want this, you can pick it more highly. Up next is Otawara, Soaring City. Otawara is legendary land at rare. Tap to add a blue. Channel, 3 and a blue, discard Odawara, Soaring City, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Okay, so it's a bounce spell. Bounce spells are deeply mediocre these days because every single creature has an ETB effect and every single creature does something, and bounce effects just have not been good for a couple of years now, unfortunately, much to my sadness because I loved bounce effects many years ago. This is lower than the other two. This is in the 6th through 8th pick range, I think. It's nice that it's got the versatility of dropping it as an island if you really need to. But yeah, 6th through 8th pick for Otawara. Otawara. Up next is Roadside Reliquary. Roadside Reliquary is a land at uncommon. Tap to add a colorless mana. Pay 2, tap, sack it. Draw a card if you control an artifact. Draw a card if you control an enchantment. Uncounterable bounce? True, it is technically uncounterable. Not really a big deal in Limited. So yeah, this is a black-white land, kind of. Because you get the most value if you are playing black-white, which cares about having an artifact and an enchantment down. So this is pay 3 to draw 2 cards, which is not the worst thing in the world. Real nice late game. Like, you probably don't want to be doing this on turn 4 or turn 5, where this land is probably pretty important to you. But turn 7, 8, 9, 10, to hell with this land. I'll find more lands. I'll probably draw 2 lands off of this. Yeah, this is a card that I like. It is a totally fine pick around the 5th-ish range, where you have run out of bombs and removal and incredibly good cards, and you're not quite ready to pick some sort of fringe filler for a specific deck that you're not quite in yet, and you're not quite looking for filler yet. So this is around the 5th-ish range. But again, you do need to probably start leaning towards black-white, or at least making sure that you are an artifact-heavy deck or an enchantment-heavy deck. Because if this is just a colorless land, there's no reason to play it. Rugged Highlands is another... That's reused, right? That's not new? I think. Scoured Barrens is another life gain land. We've got Secluded Courtyard. Secluded Courtyard is a land at uncommon. As Secluded Courtyard enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Tap to add a colorless mana. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type or activate an ability of a creature or creature card of the chosen type. Okay, so if you're splashing, you can name your splash creature type, and that's going to help you play it, because it'll be a splash land. If you share a lot of types, then it's kind of fixing. This is an okay card that I'm not going to go over the moon for. I'll put this 6th through 8th. If you're fairly tribal, go ahead. It's probably a fine card. Again, it's got that whole if you draft this, you get to play 24 cards that you drafted instead of 23. Your deck is that much better. So yeah, 6th or 8th-ish pick here for Secluded Courtyard. Up next is Sokenzan, Crucible of Defiance. Sokenzan is a legendary land at rare. Tap to add a red mana. Channel for 3 and a red, discard it. Create 2 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. This seems pretty meh. Pretty meh. So it's 2 surprise chump blockers, or it's 2 surprise 1/1 attackers. It's not unplayable. It's not the worst, because it is a mountain, essentially. But this is a deep step down from the other 3 that we've seen so far. This is way weaker. This is a wheel. This is an easy wheel. Pick this pretty late. Swiftwater Cliffs is another life gain land. Takenuma, Abandoned Mire, is a legendary land at rare. Tap to add a black. Channel for 3 and a black, discard it. Mill 3 cards, then return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. Costs 1 less for each legendary creature. 4 mana is slightly expensive for this, but it's okay. I think it's, again, a step down from the green, white, and maybe the blue one, but this is definitely better than the red one. So I think this one's more in the like sixth-ish, fifth-ish, sixth-ish range, I think. You're hopefully going to be able to grab something from your graveyard if you're milling relatively blind. Ideally, you would already have something that you're planning to pick out of it. But yeah, you'll play it fifth through sixth pick. And even the red one, you'll play the red one 100% of the time. You just should not spend like a legitimately real pick on the red one. Thornwood Falls is another life gain land. Tranquil Cove is another life gain land. Uncharted Haven enters the battlefield tapped. It's a common land. As Uncharted Haven enters the battlefield, choose a color. Tap, add 1 mana of the chosen color. This is Evolving Wilds. This is Evolving Wilds that doesn't trigger landfall. Or thin your deck for that 0.3% improvement. If you're fixing, here you go. Here you go. And even if you're not fixing, it's still basically Evolving Wilds. You can play this to fix your opening hand that oops had all the wrong color lands in it. It's fine. You'll play it like Evolving Wilds. You'll pick it like Evolving Wilds. So you'll pick it, you know, in the 6th through 8th range. Pack 2, Pack 3, if you're splashing, then you probably want it a little bit higher. Evolving Wilds is not in this set, no. Windscarred Crag is another life gain land, and that's going to wrap it up for the multicolored artifacts and lands. So YouTube, I'll see you probably tomorrow for the white set review, and then we'll do blue, black, red, green. So thanks for hanging out. Let me know what you want to know in the comments. Be respectful. I am not approaching Kamigawa Neon Dynasty with much patience for people telling me what's right and wrong. I'm going to draft it the way that I want to draft it. So let me know what you want to let me know. We can have some chats in the comments, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.